On Sunday morning, Azerbaijani forces conducted an ambush in Artsakh or Nagorno-Karabakh, leaving 3 Armenian police officers dead and 1 seriously injured. Azerbaijan's defense ministry is reporting 2 dead on their side. To discuss this, I'm joined by CivilNet host and analyst Eric Hacopian. Eric, thanks again for your time. Last week, we saw representatives from Azerbaijan and Nagorno-Karabakh or Artsakh meeting. They met twice, so this was a very significant development. This is happening despite Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev saying he would not meet with, let's say, Karabakh's president or any other official. This ambush happened after Karabakh State Minister Ruben Vartanyan resigned, something the Azerbaijani side was calling for, after the meeting of the representatives of the 2 sides, where they even discussed inspections of mines, another thing Azerbaijan wanted. So there were rumors even swirling last week that the blockade will soon be lifted. So why this attack on this police van now?
This is an attempt by the Aliyev regime to blow up the talks. The peace talks that are going on between Armenia and his country, not necessarily the talks in Artsakh themselves. That's not what's relevant. What they're trying to derail is the European US-led talks to establish peace between these 2 countries. And as we know from reading between the lines, part of this peace agreement would be to set up an international framework of negotiations between the Baku regime and the Artsakh Republic. And now, what that means, the devil's obviously in the details. So what this is obviously the regime not seeing, since they're not absolutely interested in peace, not wanting to derail the peace process, and or essentially doing the Russians' bidding. Because this is where both of them agree on this, is the fact that they do not want to sign a peace agreement, Aliyev for his own reasons, the Russians for their own reasons. And he's essentially doing either their bidding, or he wants to upset the apple cart so there's never a peace agreement that he doesn't want to sign.
And there were some developments also on the international stage, which many saw as successes almost for the Armenian side. There was German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who said in a press conference that the self-determination of the people of Nagorno-Karabakh is important for a peace settlement. The Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that the trilateral statements between Armenia, Azerbaijan and Russia do not envisage checkpoints on the Lachin corridor, the only route between Armenia and Karabakh. How do you see these developments on the international stage influencing Aliyev's resorting to violent actions?
I think both of them are quite important. Let's start with the Lavrov one. Lavrov, yes, in his meeting in Baku, said that there's nothing in the November 9th agreement that talks about a checkpoint. So he blew that out of the water. And after he said that, essentially, the Aliyev is entirely isolated on this issue because the United States, the EU, Russia, the World Court have all said no checkpoint. That they should have free traffic as before, as they had agreed to on November 9th without any conditions. So he's sort of politically isolated in that. But I think there's a second part of the Lavrov meeting. There's a consistent pattern since the start of the Ukraine war in which a meeting, post a meeting between Russian officials and regime officials in Baku, there's aggression against Armenia and Artsakh. And this could very well have been the case. And this could be where Aliyev is doing the Russians' bidding in trying to blow up the European US-led peace process, which is something the Russians don't want to happen. Now, let's move on to Olaf Scholz. He's significant for a couple of reasons. His statement about self-determination, which, to be clear, at this point, that language is not even used by the Armenian government. The Armenian government talks about rights and security of people in Artsakh that need to be guaranteed, but they don't discuss the context. Olaf Scholz talks about self-determination. Now, why is he relevant? Germany is obviously the most important country in the EU. It's also historically a country that is not seen as favorable to the Armenian side. It's actually quite favorable to the other side. So I suspect, and German chancellors are generally not off-the-cuff people. The German political system doesn't produce Boris Johnsons. So this is most likely a messaging, some kind of a messaging to the regime in Baku that if you continue your intransigence, i.e. if you continue to negotiate disingenuously, this is where this is going to lead to. Or that's the line of thinking that they have in the settlement that they're talking about, which we obviously don't have the details of. But given the fact that it's the German chancellor, I suspect this was some kind of an EU messaging to the regime in Baku, which is something that he did not like. So I think all of these things have him cornered a bit, you know, and when political actors are cornered, they lash out. Sometimes they lash out in ways that don't really help themselves, but they lash out. And this is his attempt to essentially upset the apple cart and stop peace talks that he does not see as favorable to his side.
So Azerbaijan's position regarding the blockade has constantly been shifting. In the beginning, it was very much focused on environmental concerns about illegal mining in Nagorno-Karabakh. Then there was talk from Azerbaijani officials about how it was the Russian peacekeepers blocking the route. This then shifted, and now we hear many Azerbaijani officials saying that it is in fact the Armenian side that is blocking the route. Even in the context of this ambush, the Azerbaijani side is saying that Armenians are transferring weapons illegally into Nagorno-Karabakh. So why is this position always shifting?
Because it's full of lies. It's very hard to keep up with them. Fundamentally, it doesn't matter what they say. It doesn't matter what the Armenian says. The side say. It doesn't matter what the Artsakh side says. It doesn't matter what the Russians say or what me and you say. The highest court in the world has established the fact that they and they alone are blocking this road. Now, if they're doing it in cooperation with Russia, that's not how the court sees it. The court sees them as the responsible party in blocking the road. So the fact that they are blocking the road is as much of a fact as gravity. So there's not even any point in discussing it. So when you have this regime that wants to justify the unjustifiable, they'll jump from things to things, from one lie to the next. But frankly, this isn't fooling anyone at this point. And it's making them look, in some cases, like idiots, because I've spoken to some of the press people that, you know, that come internationally and they get these different narratives. And sometimes he himself disrupts the narrative. You know, they could have a line and then he gets on and he praises these thugs, made up environmentalists at the border, which are all state agents. So the narrative has gotten away from them. And almost anything that they do at this point, frankly, from a PR perspective, is as much as damage as it's doing to ordinary people in Artsakh. It's just digging a bigger hole for themselves.
And finally, I just wanted to ask Eric, Aliyev consistently says that he is the pro-peace party with regards to these negotiations. And there's always this, I guess, facade of peace talks being maintained, that Azerbaijan is for all these negotiations and everything. But at the same time, we see these coercive policies. Is he trying to strike a balance, and do you think he is successful or effective in doing so?
We need to clearly understand what he wants. He wants two things. He wants to make sure that no peace agreement is ever signed with the Armenian side. And the second one, he wants an ethnically cleansed Artsakh. Those are the two things he wants. And the first one, he never wants a final settlement on this issue, is because the moment the Armenian enemy is gone, the clock starts ticking towards the end of his regime. So regime survival is based on having an Armenian enemy, whether in Artsakh or in Armenia, it doesn't matter. So he will never sign anything because the regime survival is far more relevant to him than anything else, unless he is forced to by powers that are much greater than him. The second part is he wants an ethnically cleansed Artsakh. And any kind of a settlement, any kind of an internationally brokered agreement is likely to have the outcome that he does not want, which is some level of international guarantee and security for the Armenians living in Artsakh, even if that territory is considered by the international community as being part of, well, they have state. So he has every incentive to blow these things up. And that's why, in the long run, I don't expect these peace agreements to go anywhere. But when all is said and done, as long as our side does not fall for his provocations, he's going to be the party that's blamed for it.
Okay, well, Eric, thanks again for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on CivilNet.